All right, everyone. This is your daily dose of the gospel, a word of encouragement to keep us grounded in Christ. And I'm here with Pat Andrus. She's you guys know her, but she's in Wales. And Pat, I want to hear a little bit about your story and how you're dealing with this whole situation with the COVID-19. And for those who don't know Pat, she has gone through some medical issues in the past years. So she is potentially in the high risk for the COVID. She's also lives by herself. So this is impacting her life in a very personal way. Pat, the first question that I have for you is how have you been adjusting to all the changes?
I think I've done fairly well in adjusting to the changes. I've made a point of keeping in touch with a lot of my friends through the church family, Sea Road family, and I I have an outline. I'm not actually reading, but I have an outline to keep me organized, my thoughts organized. Um, the help in getting groceries earlier in the last couple of months was difficult, and some families stepped up and have been wonderfully helpful in bringing things I needed and making sure that I was fine. And I appreciated that very much. That was very uplifting to have that kind of support. Um, I kept in touch with a lot of people. That was something that I really had to work on. I found that normally living on my own, I'm very comfortable with this. I've been on my own for many years, so it hasn't been a problem. But it was difficult, especially at the beginning of all this social isolation and whatever it is. So I've made a point of keeping in touch through media, telephone calls, and just reaching out to people in general. One of the other things that I discovered a couple of weeks after I was in March, when we were home a lot, is that I was able to start allowing myself to have time to relax on certain days and not feel like I had to keep everything in order and make sure I got a lot of tasks done in a day. There were some days that I had to really lighten up on that. For me, I think one of the big things was learning that I could make meaningful use of my time. And in the beginning, when we were first home a lot in March, I was just getting up each day and figuring out what I felt like doing. And that really wasn't working out well, because I found that I wasn't doing anything. I couldn't, it was unnerving almost to be home and not have people around and not have something that had to be done. So I let the teacher in me. I was a teacher throughout my life. So I set up a routine and a daily schedule. And I found that this gave me structure, and I'm very comfortable when I have structure. And it was not so set that it was a good way to do it. It gave me purpose each day. I started, instead of sleeping later in the morning, I get up now at 6 o'clock or 6:30 like I always have. And I have time for being in the Word, praying. Meditation has helped me immensely through this whole time period. So I've kept that up. I take time to relax when the weather was colder or rainy. I've done puzzles. I've never been a puzzle doer. I've done 2 1,000-piece puzzles this winter,
Wow.
which was astounding. Not easy, but I did them. I clean the house. I go out. I take walks. I have to walk a lot. And when the weather was colder, I used to walk along Kennebunk Beach, all the walkway there, down to Wells. I'm not going in those places now so much. It's pretty much closer to home, but I have a lot of area here to walk in. Doing all of that really kind of kept me grounded and kind of enabled me to try to put some kind of meaning in my life while I was going through this. Um, and so basically, that's what I did to adjust to the changes.
And what has been the hardest part about this, though? You know, about these life changes for you?
Um, when you first asked me this, I thought it was going to be the fact that I was home all the time. But I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I journaled a lot in the month of March and April, and I revisited some of those entries the last day or so in preparation for this interview. And I discovered the hardest thing for me was trying to keep my emotions in check. And this was a surprise. I didn't think this was such a big deal, but when I read those entries, I realized they were huge. Um, the I everything went. I went through the whole cycle. It's of anger, frustration, isolation, denial of the reality of the situation. And it is funny. I think of it now and I kind of laugh. Um, but what I have realized, and this was a huge breakthrough for me, was recognizing that what I thought was fear of the disease, and as you mentioned, last year I had health issues I had a stroke in February, and then in May I was back on my feet, I could drive and everything was good. And then in July, it was discovered that I had other issues, and I had to have 3 surgeries, one the end of August, the end of September, and the end of October. So it was not until Christmas time that I really felt good again, strong again. My health was better then. So I was living the good life. I had the girls over for coffee. I was going out. I was doing things. It was
Yeah.
laughing. I have not laughed a lot in the last couple of months. But anyway, getting back to this. So December, January, and February, things were really going well. And then COVID came along. And so here I was after being in the hospital 4 different times in less than a year and feeling so good and praising God for all these things that I was able to do again and to be free and active. I love to do things. March came and I'm back home and the weather was gloomy. And so this was crazy. So anyway, what happened was my frustration and denial, et cetera, I was thinking at that point in reading my journals that the whole thing was fear. And it was not. The whole thing was my vulnerability was thrown right in my face. You know, how am I going to get food? How am I going to do things? What's going to happen if this happens? And all this. And so once I recognized it as, of course, I had doctor's appointments as well. So the doctors were, don't do this, don't do that, be careful if you do, to do this and all that. So I was trying to abide by all their rules. And then the virus was here. And so it became fear and panic. And then I realized, no, I had to let go of that. I am vulnerable, but if I do take care of myself properly and turn these anxieties over to God, that the strength would come for me to pull things back and take things more a day at a time and
Mhm.
to recognize I was okay. It was the world that was kind of off kilter. So once I got a handle on that, um, I was more able, it was easier to kind of take the days as they came and went. The hardest time of all for me was the middle of April. There were just like a week and a half there where it was rainy and cold day after day after day. And I found that unnerving. I saw very few people And I was just missing. I was missing that contact. And if there's one thing I'd like to share with people is that if someone's stuck in the house, even it doesn't have to be through ill health or anything, just reach out reach out to them with a telephone call, an email, a text. Doesn't have to be a big deal, but just some kind of contact from the outer world. And short texts that I got from friends would lift my spirits up a lot. It was just such a big deal. It was such a big deal. And if someone dropped something off, dropped groceries or something off, just seeing another person, seeing a face made a huge difference. And so don't ever hesitate to do that if there's someone around you who just needs to see another human being. During this whole time, what I found was that my journey with God, my relationship with God became much deeper. My faith is at a different level. I realized that um, I had a lot of discussions with God, and I just kind of was able to kind of figure it out that there is no answer. And as long as I took care of my responsibilities and did things that were healthy for me, keeping up exercise, keeping up my house. I know that I heard from other people that, oh, my house is a pigsty. I can't do this. I can't do that. And for a while in the middle, in April, I kind of did let things go a little, and it made me feel worse to look at my living room, and I'm like, oh, there's all this stuff piled up, like mystery people were coming in and piling books up and stuff. No, I was responsible for that. So once I got that message from whomever, and I got back into living my life the way doing my responsibility, I think that's part of it. I think people look elsewhere. They want fixes from somewhere else. But I think we own a lot of responsibility. We have the responsibility for keeping ourselves going. And so that was kind of a key for me. Once I figured this out, and I'm not lecturing people, but this is what worked for me. These were the hardest things. But once I was able to kind of put myself back in God's arms, in his responsibility, I started to relax and let him carry me on through this. And once I was able to let go of all that anxiety and whatever else, things were feeling better. And then May came and the sun started to shine. My gardens needed attending, and so I had a different purpose. So it was a trip. This March and April were a big deal.
So some passages come to mind, Pat, as you mentioned it. Obviously, cast all anxieties upon me.
Yep.
And the other thing is, more joy comes in the morning, right? It's like you can mourn for a period, but if we are in Christ, as always, there are always better days ahead of us, and the season is a great example of just the way God works in our lives. You got the winter gloomy and dark, but then the sun comes, and we have something to look forward to. And as Christians, obviously, we have the coming of Christ. We have our life in Christ. We have just our faith development, which you're going through that during this time. So maybe you already touched on the next question, but what has been the best thing about these life changes?
Oh, I think the best thing is that I once I was able to feel better about the whole situation, the best thing is I discovered that my friends are still there, and I'm not able to. It's so hard not to have people in. I'm very people oriented. I'm not a party person per se, but I love having people around. I treasure friends. And so that although now we're either sitting out front with the sea breeze freezing us or on the back deck, people will come and we can sit from one end of the deck to the other, and it's several feet, so that's safe. But that has been wonderful to be able to see people more now that there's more learning being learned about the virus and what we can do, which is I tend to look on the positive side of things. So once again, give me structure. Tell me what I can do.
Yeah.
I'd rather focus on that than what I can't do. So people drop by now. I'm still having contact, texts and telephone calls and everything from friends. I do have a lot of friends from out of the state of Maine, and I'm in touch with them. And I am I am so grateful. Every day I pray for this, that all the people I know so far are healthy. And so
Praise God.
that's such a blessing. Um, I am much more patient with changes in life now. And I have lowered, it's not so much lowered, but I don't know exactly. I have fewer expectations for perfection. I, I always,
You became more, is it the tolerance? You're more sympathetic, maybe, right? The
no,
word now.
I don't know, maybe we're talking about the same thing, but different words. But I've lowered my expectations. If this doesn't get done today, it's not the end of the world. So that's good.
Uh,
That's a good thing. And it makes life more pleasant and easier. And one really interesting thing that you and I had talked about, but my daughter, who lives up in Alaska, is working at home now with her job. And she's 4 hours, their time zone is 4 hours earlier there than it is here. So when we talked before, it would always be, it'd be 9:30 or 10 o'clock at night here. And I'm more of a morning person. So by night, I don't even want to talk. And so she would call me and I'd feel obliged to stay on the phone for an hour listening to, her. And she's like, "Are you okay, Mom?" And I'm like, "Yeah." Like, "You're not talking." And I'm like, "Yeah, it's 10:30 at night. So now it's great because she takes her lunch break at her noon time, and it's 4 o'clock in the afternoon for me. So either she calls me or I call her almost every day now. So that's great. That's been one of my greatest pleasures.
Praise
And
God.
and I forgot, and also gardening with the weather. I've added a lot of plants this year, and I've only been in this house. This is the third summer. So I have all this creativity I want to do with the gardening. And so this has really been wonderful the last couple of weeks. I've put a lot of energy and effort into that. So
So it sounds like you're keeping yourself busy. You're creating yourself a structure for yourself, a routine for yourself that is helping you to probably is it like the whole like looking forward to something every day, like you know what to expect the next day? Is that what helps you?
yeah, yeah.
The last question here, Pat, is if you would like to share like any verse that has spoken to you during this time.
Yes, I have two of them. One of them is short. I'm just reading it so I'll get it correctly stated. It's from Isaiah. It's 41 and it's the 10th verse. It's, "Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." I love that. I've loved that
Oh,
for years.
powerful.
And the other one, this is simplistic, but it's been with me all my life. For some of the younger people who may see this, including you, and when I was I was in first grade, 7 or 8 years old. It was around 1955. People don't realize this. Teachers used to use the Bible in public school in New Hampshire, and I'm sure in Maine too. And the best teacher I ever had in my whole life was my first grade teacher, Mrs. Beck. And during that first grade year, we all memorized the 23rd Psalm and the 100th Psalm. So the 23rd Psalm, as common as it is, as familiar, I should say, as it is, that really has always been it's just restorative to me. It's wonderful, and it's I see that the description of, you know, lying between but beside still waters and all that. That's so, it's so familiar to me. I love it. So those two, the short verse from Isaiah and the 23rd Psalm, have always, they're just good. They're good for me. They lift me. So
The powerful, powerful, powerful. A lot of people can resonate with those two psalms. Pat, thank you so much for your time
thank
and
you
for
for having
sharing
me.
of your story. And yeah,
And I
yeah,
send love to all my friends. And really, for those who have been helping me this spring and even last year, there aren't enough words. Your all of your friendships have meant more than I can say. So thank you.
thank you, Pat. Bye
You're
bye.
welcome. Goodbye.